Ladies and gentlemen, I have studied the history of a number of countries in the world, and based on what I have studied, I've come to conclusion that the problem of Nigeria, unlike what we have thought so far, is not the problem or the fault of bad politicians, but is the root of the problem is Nigerians themselves. Today is 2020. And some time ago, on this day, the suffering of Nigeria was so much so that the usually complacent Nigerians could not take it any longer and decided to hit the streets of Lagos, and they call it the Lekitoget Revolution. For the first time in history, we made the news for a very widespread revolution that has not happened before. Mind you, this is something that we have been praying and hoping happens. It happened, and you all know the story. Some people got shot, and after a while, the originating issue was superficially solved. The SARS team was disbanded, but the underlying problems were never taken further. In some of the studies that I made of other countries, usually what they do is that if something like this happens, that usually doesn't happen, but is in line with what is hoped for, like a revolution, they usually crystallize that date and turn it into like a mythology. Like it now becomes a date that they use to actually gather people together and make it a slogan. But here's the unique thing about Nigeria. Nigerians en masse, when I mean en masse, as a group, have been slower to actually do this thing, right? And not only have they been slower, even the people themselves are so disconnected from this that they don't even see anything wrong with their complacency. They don't see any wrong with their lackluster attitude. Somehow, they disconnect the reality of what happened on this day to the reality of their current lives. People don't understand a couple of basic things. And number one basic thing is that your country can never progress if the citizens are not interested in progressing. What does interest to progress mean? Interest to progress does not mean that you do not show interest that you want to progress, but you don't show the pain enough to communicate to whoever is in charge of your progress that you want to progress. Your country can never progress if your citizens are selfish. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you from all the studies that I've done in over 50 countries that Nigerians are some of the most selfish citizens in the whole world. What is selfish? Selfish is when you wake up in the morning and 99% of your life is how can I make it in life and how can I make it for me and my family? That is where your problems start and that is where your problem end. Even when you take a Bible and go to church or take a Quran and go to mosque, the majority of the reasons you're doing so is because you want to go to church and mosque so that God can bless you particularly and let the blessing trickle down to your family. You know, the thing about it is normally you think that that's a good thing, and it is a good thing. Humans are naturally selfish, just some people are more selfish than some other people, right? So the problem now is when you care only for you and your family, usually you there's a likelihood to partake in selfish actions that would prioritize the need of you and your family over the need of maybe like the community or the society at large, right? So for instance, if you are driving and there's traffic, you are more likely to cut corners, to go and overtake somebody just because you need to get to work late early. Nobody else is trying to get to work early. But because you have this mindset of me, 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 you're ready to break the rules. And that's where the major problem is. The first problem is somebody who's only concerned about them and the family is ready and willing more than anybody else to break the rules that were set by the society. The society looks at the group of the well-being of a whole, like the Nigerian society. But the person who is always concerned about them and their family, they are willing and quick to break rules that are set for the group just to benefit their family. So when somebody said somebody is benefiting their family, people say, "Oh yeah, that's good," but it hurts the country just by itself. Now, number two is, if you notice, a lot of Nigerians that go abroad and settle, as soon as they leave the country and as soon as they settle, the first thing they do is to go do Thanksgiving. God has saved them from a prison, which is fine. It's hypothetically, the way the country is, they're not particularly wrong. But what I noticed with Nigerian immigrants, particularly, is that they want to have nothing to do with the country. They want, right now, for the past 5 years, to associate with the country in terms of music and culture and food, right? And that is where it is, because it has become like a brand. But anything that has to do with, like, from afar, because there's things that you could do, there's things that you could say, there's things you can promote, that will just help the country or something, or in your little ways, right? They don't want to do it. In the case of this matter now, the successful countries usually make this like a national symbol, right? But in the context of the 21st century, what you see with other citizens is when they have a date, usually like 9/11. And now in the Israel one, I think it's I forgotten what it is, but it's like October, right? Where the attack that precipitated the war. They use it as a slogan. And so you have like Jewish Americans who write it, Americans who write it, then some other countries, they will just start posting it. What you see with the citizens, even in the diaspora for some of these countries, is that they keep helping to improve or increase the volume by posting on their stories, making reference on their posts, and all those things. But Nigerians, on the other side, will rather post every other thing than to even help to increase the volume for a revolutionary event, thereby communicating to these politicians that they are not actually, they don't care enough for those things, and they're not really following the news or whatever it is that's going on in the country. Now, when the bad politicians, who are also Nigerians, coincidentally, coming from the group of Nigerians that we're talking about, when the bad politicians see that the people have apathy or not too much involved or concerned, they just want to complain about bad God, but they're not really involved in the specifics, right? They keep doing what they're doing openly, because at the end of the day, when your citizens are more concerned about their personal development, that is the most ripe situation for a bad politician to thrive, because he can steal public funds, because the idea of the public funds is that they are public, they are not private. So as long as he's not stealing private funds, he's good. As long as he's not coming to your doorstep to tinker with your business, if he's tinkering with the public funds that usually in countries that work should trickle down to the business, the individual is not concerned. They show their not concernedness in their stories, in their posts, in their tweets, in their YouTube, in their FYPs. Nigerians in the diaspora are the least connected, least concerned about what's going on in Nigeria politically. They are very abreast with the very dark man fighting with B-Lord. They are very aware of the Big Brother Nigeria shenanigans. They also can tell you in between Wizkid, Davido, and Burna Boy who sold more records and who bought Lamborghini in the year 2024. They know very well about Messi and Ronaldo statistics who is better between Messi and Ronaldo and who won the Ballon d'Or. They can also tell you about what's going on with the Nigerian Super Eagles and how many games they need to play to qualify for the FIFA World Cup. And they will post it on their stories and pages and posts and everything, but they will never post 2020. After all my studying and catching up on history, I came to the conclusion that Nigerians, the current Nigerians as we speak, deserve poverty as a group. Individual Nigerians, they hustle and do all those things, so they are good to go with their personal lives. But for every Nigerian that gets rich, 80% of their relatives will remain poor, okay? And the reason is this same thing that I'm telling you. Where you are concerned about you and your family, only you and your family will progress. It's not even everybody in your family that usually progresses. That's the major thing in Nigeria. The person who is concerned about me and their family, usually only like 30% of the family even progress. That's the irony of the stuff. But the main thing is everybody with this type of Nigerian mentality, right now as we speak, their country can never progress. Go and read history. Countries that are fighting wars now, countries that are going through a lot of problems now, that the GDP of Nigeria is bigger than them times 10. In 10, 20, 30 years, they're going to surpass Nigeria in standard of living only because they see themselves as an individual, but they also see themselves as connected to the group, the country. And that's regardless of what happens. So usually when you think like that, you usually go further. Like look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been going through some problems over the years. There's poor people in Ethiopia. They're struggling. But Ethiopia just created the largest dam in Africa. And a lot of the money came from diaspora. They were able to garner what they call national spirit to actually do something. No matter how brilliant your academics are outside, no matter how rich your billionaires are individually, if they don't see themselves or their future as directly connected to the progress of the country, their outrage will never get to the point of using whatever platform they have to promote events that could trigger change. This is my message for you. You take it and do whatever you want with it, but that is what it is.